While everyone's sitting down, we'll introduce the panel. So at the far end, we have Jakob Nielsen, who's the MD Digital for Group M. And next to him is Richard Brooke. He's the Media and Strategy Director for Europe at Unilever. And we have Jodie Stranger, who's the President for Global Network Clients for EMEA with Publicis Media. And to my immediate left is Keith Moore, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at Santander. So we've got a nice mix of fast-moving consumer goods brands, agencies, and in-house. So should get some good across-the-panel insights on television. So, Richard, if we can start with you, what is it that you want from TV today? Is TV delivering, and is your need changing in any way?
Yes, working, right. Fundamentally, John, we want audiences, we want reach, we want eyeballs, and lots of them. Is TV delivering? If you take the UK, the reach in 2011 in the UK from television was 94.88% on a weekly basis. And it's, of course, collapsed, he said somewhat ironically, to 93.5% last year. So TV is delivering reach. And we're fast-moving consumer goods, so you're not going to get that same answer from everyone. But the reality is we need eyeballs because we need people to buy our products. And in order for them to buy the products, they need to be aware of the products. And so we need to reach them.
So you would agree with Nicky's assertion that the power of mass broadcast TV is undeniable?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it, maybe you don't have to target sort of particular demographics, but in terms of younger people, would you say it's still delivering reach?
The average hours viewed on a weekly basis of 1634s in 2015 was 16 hours, 55 minutes a week. So, look, that's not as much as they were delivering in 2011, which was 21 hours. But nevertheless, 16 hours a week is more television than I could find to view.
So it's enough?
I didn't say it was enough. You asked me whether we were still reaching 1634s, and the answer is they're watching 17 hours of telly a week. Now, if you're a parent of a 16-year-old and your 16-year-old son or daughter is watching 17 hours of telly a week, you might have an issue with that, and you might say that's too much. But the reality is they're still watching telly.
And you don't care about their homework?
Well, I haven't got a 16-year-old.
Okay. What about Netflix? We saw the figure in terms of what they're spending, and yesterday we had a sort of a private event where it was suggested that Netflix might open up to advertising at some point. And do you think that's realistic? Is it something you'd be interested in?
If they were delivering good quality content that gets an audience, then clearly that is an attractive proposition for any advertiser because advertisers want to reach people, right? So Netflix are producing good quality content. And we need to do two things here. We need to remember that, number one, advertisers are buying consumers, not audiences, right? And secondly, consumers, like people not in this room, if you go out to Euston Road, they're not sitting there going, I'm going to go home and watch Netflix, or I'm going to go home and watch Channel 4. They're sitting there going, I'm going to go home and watch Downton Abbey, or I'm going to go home and watch Strictly. Consumers watch programmes, and it has always been thus. So a high-quality programme that consumers are engaged with and that consumers enjoy, they will watch. Very simple.
Okay. All right. Now, Keith, you do brand advertising, and I know you do some addressable as well. We'll come to that later. But does it matter to you if people on a regular basis go off and watch Netflix for 2 hours and they're no longer watching a commercial broadcaster?
Well, I can't change their behaviour, so I have to go where they go. And to the point that you made about Netflix, if they went to Netflix and Netflix took advertising, I'd go there. But no, I think the general size of audience watching commercial television is still plentiful. And it's plentiful for live viewing. If you look at, I think, for example, ITV, I think 87% of their viewing was live over the last year. So, you're still getting plenty of airtime and plenty of impact and plenty of reach, actually, which I completely agree with. That's a primary factor. But people will go where they go. So we've got to just find out where they're going, and where we can, follow them.
Okay, but obviously some of those places they go, there are no ads.
Yeah, for now.
And if there are no ads, when they come back into an ad-supported universe, can you get them as often as you need, and is it still as effective?
Well, I'll always take more, right? So I'll always take more, as any advertiser would. But TV is still really effective for us. I mean, there's no other way we can reach audiences of the size we need with the impact we need as quickly. And I think the big factor for television advertising, which, I mean, you have to take the rough with the smooth. You have to accept that audience profiles are changing. But there's no way you can create the kind of impact that you can create with things like televisual communication through other mediums, and I think on a mass way. And I think that's what's got to be massively remembered, because it's engagement with the content in the context of what they're watching that they're going to remember.
And just very quickly, you've got bank accounts for various kinds of people and students amongst them. Where do you go for students if you want to market to them? Is that TV or not TV?
We don't use TV for students, actually, to be perfectly honest. It's not because they don't watch telly. It's because we've got a great proposition and we don't need to advertise it. So it's we take 50% of share of the market without any advertising. So mainly because we pump money into. I think it was an example. I think that Owen was talking about money going elsewhere out of advertising. We pump our marketing budget into funding an incentive for students. So we give students a rail card. So when a lot of our marketing budget goes into the rail card, then that sells the product. If I was to have to target them, though, I think I would use very specific addressable channels for students, because I think they're an audience that's particularly hard to reach on television. So.
Okay. And Jodie, do you think the mass awareness top of funnel budget is safe for television? Is that role for TV completely safe? Could anybody else take it from TV?
So I'm not sure I would say it's completely safe, because I don't think anyone can forecast that. But we had a great case study of a business that was built in the digital economy. It was Airbnb. So they built their business basically in the bottom funnel. It was built through conversion of audiences. But when they identified that they needed to actually build their brand and resonate with consumers and build a relationship, they then directed their investments to television, because that was the way that they could scale what they needed Airbnb to represent to consumers beyond just converting nights booked. So I think it's not necessarily a case of whether you do or don't. Consumers are where they are, but I think television plays a very specific role, which is unique to that channel and unique to that top of funnel. So what percentage of their budget gets eroded over time, I don't think is necessarily safe and locked in. But I do think TV, to Owen's point previously, has an opportunity to potentially attract budget from other sources, so it could, in actual fact, increase.
The overall budget for TV increase?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if we have the ability to deliver on that, continue to deliver on the top of funnel awareness piece, as well as deliver better addressability and drive precision at scale, then there's no reason why budgets couldn't come from other places, direct mail, trade shows, whatever that may be.
Okay, and I know you don't really like the separation of TV and digital. People talking about us versus them and that kind of thing. I mean, how do you view it? Because I've seen it suggested that they're basically the dream team when they work together. I mean, do you view that way?
I mean, absolutely. We don't talk about it, and to this point here, nor do the consumers out on Euston Road, talk about when we're viewing television or when we're viewing digital. We spend most of our time as an agency trying to work out how we find consumers across screens and across channels. And that's probably what we invest most of our time in, and I guess where most of our dialogue is with broadcasters and media owners is how do we chase those consumers across screens. So we don't want this conversation to be about TV versus digital or the 55-inch versus the mobile phone versus the tablet. We want this conversation to be about how do we respect and appreciate that consumers are going to toggle between all of those. They have that choice. We cannot change that. How do we simply find them so that we get them with the right place in that right format? We manage duplication, that we manage appropriate frequency, and that we transmit appropriate messaging to them based on where they are and what they're actually viewing content on. It is not an or for us at all. It's an and really.
Okay. And just briefly, what do you want from digital? Is it mainly incremental reach? Is that why you use it?
Sorry?
Is it mainly incremental reach? Is that what you want from digital?
From digital? It will play a different role depending on what its task is. The way that we plan is that we would digital in effect is an incremental reach to television. Television will always get you that bigger leg up, so to speak, and then digital will always be an incremental. What we're investing in technology-wise is how do you measure cross-screen reach, and that is going to vary by audiences. So with younger audiences, actually, you may be building that from digital first, and then television actually may be your incremental, and then vice versa for different audiences. So I think it's certainly a cross-screen approach, and that's not an easy calculation to undertake, which is why as an industry, it would be incredibly helpful between the agencies, the data providers, the technology solutions, the broadcasters, the various other media channels, that there was greater collaboration and greater appreciation of this is all coming together, and operating in silos as companies is not helpful in the long run.
Okay, and Jacob, I mean, TV is still performing for you, we know that already. What is missing? Is it addressable? I mean, do you obviously agree with your boss, I guess?
It's always tricky to come after your boss. You can either do really poorly or much better. Clearly, the latter part won't happen in this case. TV, you nearly have to take a step back. That I think everyone acknowledge. Consumers are using media in general differently today. 10 years ago, when we watched TV, we watched it in a certain way. It was a family event. You watch one program. It was more easy for an advertiser to get in connection with us. Today, you have many devices. You have many channels. You sit with your iPhone, even though you try to hide it for your wife. But you have obviously many different devices and many distractions. But what all this, and which makes it more tricky. But what it also gives you is opportunities. You start having set-top boxes. You start having data sources. You start having technology slowly. Still a lot of technology needs to be employed. But if you start having that, and you can start reaching a certain audience when you need that combined with the rest of your media plan, then all of a sudden you get into addressable TV. And you can only echo what I think everyone agrees to. The top of the funnel is immensely important. It's important to build brands. If you don't build brands, you will have a smaller brand in the future. But you now have the opportunity to go down the funnel. And that you can, Irvin have said it, but other people have said that you can take money from other medias, but you can also take it from the warehouses where you don't sell products anymore. You sell products online. So all that will start to change, but it's quite new, and it's early days, but that's quite exciting.
So TV still delivers for you then, but I mean, it sounds like you have to work harder for it now. In terms of
you have to work harder and differently.
And is there a cost element to that? I mean, is it becoming more expensive to reach
but
people?
It doesn't matter. Our clients pay us higher fees, so it's not really a problem, right?
Okay.
So that's
okay, which is obviously, presumably.
We are all joking aside because
I'm glad you said that.
That was a joke. To look at the digital world. The digital world is a fantastic world, but the last 10 years, it's been more and more complex. You have SSPs, you have demand-side platforms, you have exchanges, you have all kind of different complexity in it. That might change over the next 10 years, but you had that. It would be great if we don't create that complexity in the new world of addressable TV. It would be great that if we could figure out how to work together, if we could build platforms that would, and data sets that will work together, so we don't have to buy audiences from different broadcasters that are like comparing apples to bananas. That makes it very, very complex. If it makes it very complex, we will try to get into it quickly, but our clients will probably say, "Ooh, I don't understand this. I know what I did in the past. Now this is complex and it's not measurable, etc., etc. How do we do that?" Versus you build something that's easier to understand than one form of platform, one partnership, one ecosystem. Then you are much, much further ahead.
Okay, and just quickly, if we look forward 5 or 10 years, I mean, or even into infinity, how much could be addressable in the market? I mean, if it works and it proves that it works, and we still need the top of funnel marketing, where does the line get drawn ultimately?
Well, I think there's one big confusion in the business as a whole. We talk about addressability and programmatic as the same. Let's define how we...
Addressability in particular.
Yeah, but let me just define that first of all, so we agree on that. So addressability for us is you reach a certain audience. You do that by using data, etc. If you do that in using technology and very efficiently, you do that programmatic. Programmatic will come second to all this. It's all about getting that addressability into it. If Coca-Cola needs to do a commercial for the Coca-Cola, they don't need to do addressable TV. They need to do big reach campaigns, and different clients will have different elements of what they need to do. And I'm not sure addressability, as we talk about a defined audience, will be more than 30 to 50% of the market for the next 10 years. But it varies. That number will be very, very different from client to client.
Okay, and then beyond 10 years, if we go right ahead to the end game, how much is addressable? Is it the same figure or does it keep growing?
Programmatic will be 100%, but I'm not. When you buy addressable for a broadcaster, you will pay a higher price. The net price will most likely be, if you do it the right way, the net price, the outgoing price will be lower, but the ingoing price will be higher. So therefore, if you don't have a need to reach a audience, why would you pay a higher price for that?
Okay, well, Richard, fast-moving consumer goods, I mean, in theory, you shouldn't need addressable at all, I guess.
Not technically true.
Okay, so tell us where you could ever find use.
So I think, yes, fast-moving consumer goods, I've said it's about reach. You'll hear that again before then. But the reality is that addressable does provide opportunity. Now, fundamentally, it's about selling stuff. It's about pleasing the consumer, it's about building brand equity, it's about making sure the consumer is aware of your product when they're standing in that point of purchase or online or whatever. We can get very wrapped up in what we can do, and we can forget the human truth here, which is we want to tell the consumers how great the brands are we are making and how great the products are we have, and we want them to like our brands and buy them. Now, addressable can add value. So if you take our business, there are certain, I totally agree, I don't necessarily agree 30 to 50%, but who knows?
It might be different.
For us, it might be. But the reality is that addressable offers opportunity. There's two ways that I think it offers opportunity. Number one, it can bring advertisers back into, or can bring first-time advertisers into television. So I don't know how many people here have been to the Odeon on Fulham Road recently, but back in the 80s when I was living in London, I used to go there and I used to see the Hibernian Dance Centre advertised, which was just around the corner. I remember the ad very well, primarily because it wasn't very good, but I do remember it very well. Now, you could get new advertisers coming into the medium because they can, advertise to a relevant audience, car dealerships or the Hibernian Dance Centre, if it still exists. So that's good for television, because actually advertisers spending money gives TV companies money, which means content, which means eyeballs, which means... And the other area is if you happen to own or manufacture ice cream, and you can use addressable advertising to target coastal towns in those balmy British summers where the mercury hits 80 degrees back in 1977. The reality is that you can use addressable. Now, my answer to that question is going to be very, very different to Keith's, and I'm sure you're about to ask him the same question. But I don't know where that will go or how it will get there or the path to it, but I can see value for different brands, different products, doing different jobs. And I think I love Derwin's top middle of the funnel. I think that's a really good analogy. So I think it just depends is the politician's answer. It depends.
Could anybody ever persuade you to give up the women for a product you have that is mainly aimed at men, or vice versa?
You mean wastage?
Yes, give up what they would call wastage and...
We've had this conversation before, John.
I know, and I want you to. Yeah.
No, so wastage, FMCG, we're in 99% of UK homes, I think, or near as. The example I always give when the example of wastage comes up, we've got a very product that everyone will have heard of called Dove, which originally started as a female brand, and everybody knew what Dove stood for. Then we launched Dove for Men. Everyone knew what that stood for without actually having bought the brand, because all of those people that had seen the Dove for Women ad that weren't necessarily in the target audience could immediately identify with the brand attributes of Dove for Men. I don't think, I mean, it's the old analogy, people who aren't consuming your product today are tomorrow's consumers. So the reality is if you're going to build memory structures and if you're going to build brand equity, you're not just building it for now, for the person that's buying it now, you are also building it for the people who want to buy it and who will want to buy it in the future. So actually, broadcast, wastage doesn't exist. And by the way, those 1634 men, when you're buying 1634 women, you're not paying for them anyway.
Yeah.
Wastage in TV doesn't exist.
No.
There's value to all inventory. You pay different levels of prices. You get some with something you buy very high. There's no wastage in TV.
No. Well, what if somebody offered you an ad break where you just got the men, someone else got the women, and gave you a discount? Is that no good?
Well,
You don't get the women.
I
obviously,
mean, I'd ask them how they can afford to give me a discount in the first place. Prices should be competitive enough as it is. But joking aside, I think the reality is, it depends, again, on the ad. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we've already said wastage it is tomorrow's consumers. So you could say, okay, I'll take that deal. But then, you come to launch a product and, it doesn't get off the ground. So you damage your brand in the future. So, again, I think it's a...
Okay, let's ask Richard then, because we might be different for you. Sorry, Keith. So, you're actually doing addressable with Sky on AdSmart in the UK, or at least you've certainly run a campaign. So, did that work for you?
It did. I mean, it brought new money in to the TV medium. So we were targeting business banking customers, which it's an area we wouldn't necessarily have gone into with mass market because the proposition is very tightly defined. So it allowed us an opportunity to bring some new money in rather than replace money that was already there. I think there's two issues, though, that we need to kind of step back and look at. One is the point that was made earlier on about this reductive model, because I think the issue is more the defensibility of marketing budget. I think it becomes a bigger debate. And actually, it's not really about the intra-fighting of top of the funnel, addressable, et cetera, it's more about defending with CEOs and with CFOs marketing budgets per se. And I think the value that addressability brings is that it allows you to defend a bit more easily because you've got data and the data's better. The issue is it becomes reductive and you end up disappearing, as Owen said earlier on, up your own backside and the business just gets smaller and smaller. And I think trying to find a way of making, for me, 100% addressable would be more about the ability to have the data to prove it's working rather than the ability necessarily to do micro-targeting. So I think the definition of addressability as it stands now is different to what I'm talking about. But I think the value of having a consistent way to measure and deliver to the business an understanding of what the value of what you're doing is the key point going forward. And I think the second thing, which isn't really being talked about here because it's a very media-focused debate, is the issue of the cost of content production. So I think one of the things that provides a barrier to entry, particularly in addressable situations, is the cost of production of the ads that go into that space. If you're spending 200 grand on a particular campaign, that's quite big in a kind of like AdSmart sense. But your ad costs you 150 grand, which is actually quite cheap. then that's not an equation that works. Because you can't depreciate the cost of your ad over the length of the campaign. So I think we need to also focus not just on the media equation, but the part of the market that hasn't really ever been broken down properly, which is the cost of content. I know that's not what we're here for today, but I think people should be aware of, from a client perspective, that I've got two elements when I'm considering, and media is just not one of them. Is one of them, the cost of content production, and how you make that relevant to specific target audiences is the other.
Is there any danger that if you prove that addressable works, and you have lots of case studies within Santander where you clearly got new sales, you get a new CEO come in one day who's under pressure from the board to get some short-term sales, and he turns around to you and says, right, pull that money out of your big brand building because I know that addressable works and I can see the results straight away.
Yeah, that's a very real risk. I mean, that's what I was saying. And so what I need to do, and what I'd encourage more clients to do, is to try and push to get a more understanding of the quality of the impact of the other part of the mix that's the kind of top of the funnel television. We can't, the kind of audience measurement mechanisms that we have at the moment aren't necessarily going to give us the kind of sound data that we need that can compare with the addressable kind of data we get. The kind of data I've got in-house, where I've got 14 million customers, and I can target every single one of them at any particular point of the day, live, from a feed, through a programmatic ad on a DSP. So I think it's very difficult, and the clients need to push, they need to work with the agencies, work with the media owners to try and find a way of making that defensible, because that's a real risk.
So you need more to prove the long-term value of big brand building.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's it. If I just it feels a little like we're suggesting that addressable could be a threat to television. In actual fact, I think if we see it through the lens of opportunity to, this is not necessarily about just targeting Martha, who lives in Fulham, who drives a red car, who has 2 kids. This could be as broad as pet care owners, or pet owners, for pet food. It doesn't need to be a finite kind of targeting option. This can still be broad, this can still be mainstream, but it gives us the opportunity to learn more, know more, segment more, target better, and to the point of accountability and measurement. I think if we see it more as an opportunity, less than a risk and a threat, we're going to progress faster. And I think speed is going to be key. Addressable at the moment in the US is 1% of the total TV marketplace. And if we're going to get to 40 or 50, which we may very well do, there is a lot of catch-up that needs to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. And I appreciate at the moment that the testing ground is very much in the automotive and the financial services sector, and the sectors that are perhaps putting that lens on things with regards to very finite targeting. But FMCG brands will be in that, and that's how we'll get to kind of 40 or 50%. But it won't be going in with the lens of micro-targeting.
Okay, yeah.
The only thing we have to be careful we don't start thinking digital targeting criteria in the TV world. Right now we are talking at a household level. We are not talking about detailed person. We know it's Martha in Fulham driving a red car. That maybe one day, but we're far, far away from that. And we have to get it closer to how TV is traded today, and then think about that's how we can find some audiences that are interesting. Take AdSmart, and this is their own numbers. In the beginning of this great product they've developed, 70 to 80% of all advertisers were non-traditional TV advertisers. It was advertisers where you have a BMW dealership in Edinburgh, and you've never ever done TV advertising, but now you have the capabilities because you can use Mosaic postcode data and do things like that. But that's not reaching a certain person in that area, it's reaching people in that area. But that's still quite fundamental in how you change and how you think about it. But that's where we start. Otherwise we start promising something we can't deliver.
Okay, now have we got any audience questions? Okay, there's a gentleman right at the back, quick hands. I don't think we've got mics, so if you stand up and shout, and then if it's quiet, I'll just repeat it. Oh, we have mics, okay. If you can wait, and then please introduce yourself and where you're from.
Mark's not. Oh, it is. Mark Greenstreet from Denso Aegis Network. A question for Richard. Other than the addressable side of servable advertising, do you find anything attractive in the potential for capping frequency in servable advertising, which is something that would be very different than the current linear broadcast stream?
The attractive thing about advertising, period, is the audience. So, is frequency capping... we would set about planning campaigns, and our agencies would plan campaigns to an optimum frequency level, an optimum reach, to do the job that is set by the objectives. So, the reality is that is how TV has been bought and should continue to be bought, which I'm not sure answers the question, but it's about as good as I can think of on the hoof.
I'll just follow up with an additional point then. What I'm saying is, on TV, a third of them will see loads of the ads, a third of them will see one of the ad, and if you were able to...
So long as the third, yeah, so you're looking at a balance, and it's identifying an optimum for frequency range of 4 to 6, and then buying the right program, the right channel mix, the right day parts to deliver against that frequency range, because you believe that frequency range is what's going to elicit the response you want to elicit. But it's been a long time since I was a TV buyer, and I'm glad I can remember that much.
Yeah, but you already think frequency. But if you when you
well, frequency is just a level of reach, is it not? That 20%, frequency is a high level of reach against.
You might get tools where you can do that more easily today and better.
Anything that helps you so boil it back to the consumer, right? Anything that allows you to reach the consumer, it's Nikki's last chart, which I even, right story, right person, right place, right time. Yeah, I think it's time. You flicked it every bit. Anything that would allow you to do that the most effective way, and let's be clear, and therefore get the response you want, which in a lot of cases is to sell more stuff, or alternatively to shift attitudes and opinions, then okay, let's be effective and efficient at doing that, because what the advertisers want to do, is sell more stuff or grow, and brands need to grow to continue to exist. To Erwin's point earlier. So any
tools you get, you will use to facilitate that.
You need to advertise in the correct way.
Yeah.
To get the right response.
Okay, there's a question up there.
Hi, Jonathan, Channel 4. Question for the whole panel, really. We're talking about TV today, I suppose, as we define it. I'm increasingly hearing it's an AV world and there's AV teams and agencies. And that slightly worries me. And Nikki's stats around the millions of views that some of these ads get on social media. How do you differentiate between, I suppose, an impact on TV and the value of that versus an AV impact on Facebook or YouTube or on the internet more broadly in terms of value and impact? Because I do worry that, a Facebook view, 3 seconds, no sound in a newsfeed is increasingly being seen as the same as an impact in the middle of Gogglebox, X Factor, etc. And I do worry about that, and the kind of blending of different measurement techniques is blurring the picture for clients.
Okay, Jakob, you take that first.
I won't answer your question directly. I'll let you guys do that. But Richard said earlier today that quality content is important, and broadcasters today spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds developing high quality content. And there are big American companies with a video network that have a preferred title to top 5% of their inventory, which is people slapping other people with a fish, etc. That is not TV, despite whatever they tell you. That's how I would answer that question.
Okay.
I thought you would like that.
Jodie, do you want to take that? I mean, is a Channel 4 on-demand view as good as a Facebook view, or vice versa?
I mean, look, from an agency perspective, of course there are filters and criteria that differentiate those. Content is key. Content and the quality of that content will determine how engaged a consumer is in that content, how they socialise that content, and that is going to vary. Of course, sound off, halfway below the screen, etc. Criteria are all filtered into how we analyse that.
Okay. Any more questions? So, I mean, it sounds like context still matters then. We're being told that audience is the most important thing.
I mean, content absolutely matters, and you can see that with acquisitions like AT&T and Time Warner in the US. Content is key, and distribution owners want to have even more control over that. So, yeah, absolutely.
No, as I say, I mean, I remember it was drilled into me when I was at Howard Spink all those years ago. You know, content is king, content is matters. Content is what the consumers watch. And I actually think the world of content is in rude health. I'll get 2 examples why. Number one, there's a high street retailer in Holland called MediaMarkt, and I had the misfortune to be in there on Saturday, and the queues, right, were I only went in for a set of headphones, headphone buds for 99 cents, and the queues were back. People picking up high definition 60-inch television sets with surround sound that could make you a cup of tea if you really wanted it. And then I went to the IBC convention in Amsterdam, and the dazzling array of stuff that manufacturers, content creators have got to play with. I mean, if anybody's been watching Planet Earth on the BBC, it is an incredibly rich world. And the canvas these guys are playing on is massive. The equipment they've got to play on it is huge. And the stuff that we as consumers can watch it on is just improving by the minute. So, I mean, if we were still watching Planet Earth on a cathode ray telly, different conversation. So, yes, content is king. It's not only about the quality of the content, it's about the reception of it, it's about how it's made. And if content continues to be as good as it is today, that figure of 94% reach, that has a chance of maintaining a position.
But I completely agree with that. Obviously, to give JA a little bit of a run for his money, it doesn't mean that content is the only thing, because we should obviously learn. And you have the Facebook, the Googles of this world who have an awful lot of data, have an awful lot of technology capabilities, and it puts pressure on all of us to embrace that, and for broadcasters and to distributors to embrace that. But if you do that, and you push the boundaries, you get into the world of addressable TV. And then you're very, very powerful if you're a broadcaster, you're in that world.
Okay.
And I absolutely agree. I think that the television sector, broadcaster sector, has a lot to learn from the digital companies that set these visions, set these roadmaps, whether that was mobile, whether that was video. They accelerate their innovation path to go and deliver on them. And whilst the quality of content spectrum is obviously varied, that we are able to understand audiences on those platforms better than anyone else, and we are able to connect those audiences. In some cases, some of the closed ecosystems aren't quite so helpful, but I would certainly take some lessons from how those companies do accelerate and progress ahead.
Okay, got time for one more audience question, if someone's got one. Okay, gentleman there.
Shall I shout?
No, wait for the mic.
Everyone
Oh,
here.
okay.
I've got wood and my company is called Deconstruction. I wanted to ask this when Owen was talking, but I can ask you guys just as easily.
Okay.
I wanted to ask this when Owen was talking, but I can ask you just as easily. How confident are you in being able to persuade audiences that it's still worth paying for this content through advertising? That's the big question here. I agree with everything you're talking about, targeting, programmatic, addressability, importance of content, yep, blah, blah, blah. How feasible do you think it is that audiences will continue to effectively indulge advertising and make all this knit together? Because that I see as the biggest challenge.
Okay, Richard, you go first.
I've known Bob for some years, and you always rely on him throwing a difficult curveball at the end of the session. Actually, I'm going to throw that right back at the audience to a degree. there's lots of different nationalities represented in the room. The UK has a really, really good ecosystem. 9 minutes an hour in peak and so on. 9 minutes an hour, 12 minutes on satellite, I think it is. So we look after our ecosystem in the UK. We have quality content, but the advertiser experience that you get in the UK is very different to ones that I am led to believe you might get in other markets like the US. So to the broadcasters out there, to JA and to all the other, it's up to you to protect your ecosystem. If you protect your ecosystem and you make it a pleasure to be in it, the advertisers will come and spend their money on your platforms or on your channels because you're delivering eyeballs. And the advertisers and the consumers, the viewers, will look there and they'll go, you know what? I'm happy with watching this ad. I'm happy with this trade-off because I'm getting an enriching experience, a good experience. Yeah. But if you break that by suddenly putting 22 minutes of ads out and the ads aren't very good, I'll come back to that in a second. You break that, then the consumers are going to say, well, you know what? I don't want to watch the ads because I'm not getting as much out of it. Now, it's not just down to the TV stations to do that. The advertisers have got a role to play here. The agencies have got a strong role to play. The advertisers' role is let us not actually say, you know what, we'll air a poor ad. We'll air an ad that the consumer's not going to like because advertising is content. We can debate that for hours, let's not. In my view, advertising is content. So the advertising product we commission needs to be good. Right? The agencies need to continue to strive to produce the best possible creative. We can all kill this. We can, to Bob's point, we can all drive the consumers away, but let's not, hey? Let's protect what we have. Let's recognise this is a creative industry, and let's recognise it's all of our responsibilities to make sure that that industry remains robust.
Okay, I think that's a nice note to finish on. So thank you very much to the panel, and then Keith, who's left early.